Alrighty, folks, thanks for tuning in to today's video. James Cards FC here, and today, inspired by the recent performances that we've seen in the Champions League and the Premier League and all the fun that's happening in the world of soccer, I wanted to put down a slideshow basically going over what's been going on and where it might lead us in these next few months in terms of the soccer card market. So I've titled this presentation Hobby Stars Flame Out and the Spotlight Will Shift. So let's go ahead and talk about what's been going on in the real world of football, what might be happening in the future of the real world of football, and how that relates to our market. So without further ado, we will go ahead and get started with the introduction. So with PSG bowing out of the Champions League, the curtain has officially closed on Messi and Mbappe for the 2022/2023 season. Nobody cares about their pursuit of the League One title, and a title in that league does nothing for either player's narrative or either player's market in a general sense. They're still going to be the exact same legacy that they had prior to either winning or losing the League One title. So we also lost out on Ronaldo to Saudi Arabia, which has left us with the former three main drivers of the soccer card market out of the spotlight for maybe the first time since the market exploded in 2020. So Messi, Mbappe, and Ronaldo, three of the biggest forces that we've had in our market for these past few years, are now going to be officially out of the spotlight for the next few months for a variety of reasons. Ronaldo is off in Saudi Arabia doing who cares what. Messi and Mbappe are pretty much done with their full season. Now they're out of the Champions League. Nobody cares about League One. And so we will move forward with whatever else happens in this market with all these guys being absent. So what does this mean for their markets in particular, those players being Messi, Mbappe, and Ronaldo? And then where will the spotlight go next? Because, of course, as the market continues, the spotlight has to be on something. So what will it land on now that those guys are out of the picture over these next few months? So let's talk about the Messi market forecast for a minute. I started this off by saying assuming no major outside catalyst, which would be a huge unexpected increase or decrease in demand for soccer cards, this is what I would see the forecast as being for Messi. So Messi's season is over, but he's still likely to be the Ballon d'Or winner after his performance at the World Cup and his performance with PSG prior to this most recent Champions League exit. It's possible that he gets a transfer in the summer, but none of us really have any idea what's going to happen with him. He could stay at PSG. He could, I don't even know how it would financially work, but maybe he can return to Barcelona. He could go to the MLS. He could retire. I have no idea what Messi's going to do. Nobody has any idea what he's going to do, but we will probably have some news in the summer with whatever his decision ends up being. So next point here, is another Ballon d'Or all that meaningful to his market? Probably not. He already has 7. Him getting an 8th really doesn't do anything for his legacy, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. I definitely wouldn't buy into his market right now, just trying to play up a 8th Ballon d'Or win being some big deal for his market. So yeah, don't see it, but yeah, that's going to be a thing that happens. He's probably going to win Ballon d'Or. Is it meaningful for his market? Probably not. Doesn't change his narrative at all. At this point, his legacy is pretty much set in stone. So while Messi has no obvious chances to create performance catalyst for his market in the short term, it's also unlikely that this loss changes his market in any meaningful way downwards in the short or medium or long term either. I put down there on the bottom of the screen his card ladder index over the past 12 months. So as you can see, his index of cards has dropped 50% over the last 12 months, but since November, which is when the World Cup started, his prices have been pretty level. They had a dip when people thought Argentina was going to go out of the tournament pretty early after they lost to Saudi Arabia and looked shaky against Australia. But of course, they rebounded and they won the tournament, and his prices went back up to where they were pretty much before the World Cup started, and they've been pretty flat ever since. So I personally would not expect this to deviate too much. I don't think we're going to see another 50% dip, although it's certainly possible, and I definitely don't think we'll see a 50% gain either. He is now fully out of the spotlight, and the winds of the market will take his market wherever it may land. So let's move on to Kylian Mbappe's market forecast. Again, assuming no major outside catalyst here, Mbappe's season is over, and despite a massive World Cup performance, this is likely seen as a disappointing season for him overall. Round of 16 exit for his club and a non-Ballon d'Or winning season. So there's questions starting to go around about Mbappe, as there always are during transfer windows. Is this the window he finally leaves PSG? Is this finally his time to go? Seems like it should be, but of course, none of us have any idea. But of course, those rumors are going to be out there, and they're going to get bigger and bigger as we move into the summer. So Mbappe's next catalyst opportunity is going to be this summer transfer window, but if he stays, it continues to be a Champions League win or bust for his narrative, and the other young stars could regain pace on him as we go through the rest of this season. So, for example, if a guy like Vinicius Jr. has a big performance for Real Madrid and leads them to another Champions League, Vinicius Jr. starts to close that gap a little bit on Mbappe. If Haaland becomes what we used to think of him as at the start of the season when he was scoring hat tricks every game, if he rediscovers that form for Manchester City and they win the Champions League and the Premier League, then maybe he starts to really close the gap on Mbappe. But for right now, Mbappe still seems to be that guy that everyone in the market really wants on the modern side. So same graph down there with Mbappe's index. Much like with Messi, he had a 50% drop over the past 12 months, but it's been level since about the December timeframe. Not really sure what's going to happen with his market. He could get a pretty nice dip here just because he's not meeting the expectations that are outlandish for him, but the fact that he's not meeting him is not all that great. His legacy is set in stone as being the best player of this next upcoming generation, but if somebody else comes up to compete with him, whether that be a guy like Haaland having huge Champions League, a guy like Vinny Jr. having a big Champions League, there's options out there that could hurt his market indirectly, but for the most part, I don't think he'll take a huge loss or a huge gain in either direction. Then we move on to Cristiano Ronaldo's market forecast. Again, assuming no major outside catalyst, his career is pretty much over at this point, barring a surprise loan to Sporting or something like that brings him back into Europe. His career is pretty much over. His legacy, like Messi, is set in stone, and it's been talked about at length, but his legacy is now seen as inferior to Messi's by the majority of the market. You can believe that Ronaldo was a better player. You can believe that Messi was a better player. It doesn't really matter. The market has pretty much made it clear that they significantly prefer Messi at this point, and I don't expect that the market will flip its mind, especially considering Ronaldo is off in Saudi Arabia at this point, unless there is some random influx of Ronaldo buyers and Saudi Arabia buyers into the market. I don't see the gap between them changing anytime soon. So Ronaldo has no obvious catalyst in the short or midterm for demand increases, and he's essentially a retired player at this point waiting for general market demand to move his prices and to move his market. So much like with Messi and Mbappe, he's had a 50% drop over the past 12 months, but since December, his market is pretty flat. And again, like with Messi and like with Mbappe, over the next few months, the whims of the market will really be moving his prices since he can't really get any positive catalyst or create any FOMO on his market. Alrighty, that moves us into the upcoming catalysts that we might have on the market. So where will the market demand shift? Let's look at the upcoming obvious catalyst and try to pin down where people's attention might go. So we have the Premier League title race, which is between Arsenal and Manchester City. We have the Europa League knockouts for that tournament. We have Arsenal, Manchester United, and then maybe a surprise club coming through, but Arsenal and United are obviously the two biggest clubs, so the most attention in that tournament is on them. Then, of course, we have the Champions League knockouts. The current odds show that it is Man City 1, Bayern Munich 2, Real Madrid 3, Napoli 4, and Chelsea 5. And then we also, of course, after all of this, we'll have the summer transfer window. So this is the menu. This is the script for the next few months. These are the biggest catalyst in terms of player performance and team performance that will be affecting our market. So let's go ahead and start with the teams that will be affected by these upcoming catalysts. I mentioned a few of them previously, but I'll go into a bit more detail on them right here. You have Arsenal fighting for the Premier League and Europa League titles with a team of young stars. You have Manchester City fighting for Premier League and Champions League titles with a star-powered roster that has hobby favorites like Haaland, like Foden, like Kevin De Bruyne. You have a lot of hobby-relevant players on that team, despite the fact that they probably don't have the most fans in the Premier League. They have a lot of hobby fans. You also have Manchester United, probably the most popular club in the Premier League, fighting for the Premier League top four and the Europa League title with a massive fan base. Obviously, the Europa League is not as meaningful as the Champions League, but the fact that Manchester United is in it brings its own level of attention to it. Below that, you have Bayern Munich fighting for the Bundesliga that nobody really cares about in this market, as well as the Champions League titles with a very deep roster. Not really any standout player. I guess you could say Musiala because he's the hobby type guy, and then you have older guys like Muller, but this is just a really stacked, really balanced, really deep roster for Bayern Munich. Then you have Napoli, who are fighting for the Champions League title, led by two young forwards, Kvicha and Victor Osimhen, two hobby darlings, one of them being a future hobby darling because Kvicha Kivica doesn't have any cards yet, but Osimhen obviously is becoming a hobby darling and a very popular name in both the real football and as well as the soccer card market. Napoli has pretty much already won the Serie A. I think they're like 20 points clear or something ridiculous. So they'll be fully focusing on the Champions League, and they have a pretty decent shot at winning depending on how their draws go. Then, of course, you have Real Madrid fighting for their second straight Champions League title with a massive fan base and, of course, some hobby favorites like Vinicius Jr., like Camavinga's a hobby favorite, especially in comparison to how good he is in real life. You have guys like Karim Benzema, you have Luka Modric, you have all these great names, especially for such a historic club, and they'll be fighting for their second straight Champions League title. So with that, we can talk about some of the players that might be under the spotlight as we move through this next phase of the market over these next few months. You have the guys from Arsenal. I just shouted out a couple guys from each of these different categories. For Arsenal, I picked Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard, two of the younger stars on the club. And of course, if they end up winning either the Europa League or the Premier League, or maybe both, then both of these guys probably will have a pretty big hand in that and could be in line for some good narrative and possible price increases. Then, of course, you have Manchester City also competing for the Premier League and competing for the Champions League. They are currently the favorites in the Champions League, despite the fact that I think they're even now on their tie and they have to score a goal in their next upcoming match. But by any event, Vegas likes them as the favorite to win the Champions League, and obviously they're up there with Arsenal in terms of the Premier League. So you have Erling Haaland, super obvious, hobby loves him, and then you have a guy like Kevin De Bruyne who winning some major trophies like the Champions League would really add to his legacy. Of unfortunately, nothing really worked out for him with Belgium, but perhaps a Champions League trophy elevates his narrative in a way that we haven't seen yet before. Of course, with City, you also have guys like Foden and then some of the younger players that may or may not play a role for them. Then going down the list, you also have Manchester United. You have Marcus Rashford, who over the past couple months has been one of the more popular names in the hobby. No idea if his run of form is going to continue, but a lot of people are definitely paying attention to him and his market. And then I also put Casemiro on here, sort of a wild card. People have really started to take into a narrative that Casemiro is the glue and the most important part of Manchester United these days. So a guy that really wasn't hobby relevant when he was with Real Madrid or with Brazil, now maybe getting some hobby relevancy at Manchester United is something to possibly look out for over the next few months, especially if they can capture another trophy. So moving up to the top right, we have Bayern Munich. I picked Musiala, the young star of the team. He was one of their better players against PSG, and it's possible that he could really move up the prospect list to maybe the number 1 or 2 spot for the guys outside of Haaland and Mbappe if he continues to perform the way he does. And then you have a guy like Thomas Muller who could add another trophy on top of his already impressive trophy case, and so his legacy obviously continues to grow and grow as he continues his play. So a couple guys to watch out there for Bayern Munich that the spotlight could be on. Then you have the two forwards at Napoli. You have Osimhen and Kivica. These guys don't have a lot of cards. Victor Osimhen obviously has a lot more, but Kivica has like no cards. Perhaps he gets some over the next couple months, but not sure if the release schedule favors him too much. But yeah, be aware of these guys. The hobby is probably going to take a huge liking to them if they continue to go deep into this tournament. Obviously, every major club in Europe is going to want them in the summer transfer window, but we'll see what ends up happening with their career. There's a lot of FOMO on these guys right now, so I'd be a bit careful with their markets, but there is going to be a lot of attention on them because they play a very exciting brand of football and they're two prospect-y type players. Then you have Real Madrid, of course, Luka Modric and Vinicius Jr. I could have picked like 6 or 7 guys for them, but I just picked these two. Modric can continue to add to his legacy, maybe really distance himself from everybody else besides the Messi Ronaldo tier for this era. Maybe he becomes that clear third if he wins another Champions League playing a major role. Then you also have Vinicius Jr. Maybe he can get a leg up in sort of going to be that next guy below Mbappe and Haaland. He didn't have a great World Cup, but perhaps his form for club brings him back up to that level. Not really sure, but yeah, I could put like 5 or 6 guys for Real Madrid. All of their markets will be very interesting to watch, and the spotlight is, of course, in the Champions League going to be on a club like that. The deeper they go, the bigger the spotlight, and usually the better Real Madrid ends up playing. So then we have some summer transfer guys. I've just put some examples. Literally everyone is going to be in summer transfer rumors, but these are 3 examples that I thought were going to be really related to our market in particular. You have the 3 PSG stars, Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar. All of them are going to be in rumors to go to a bunch of different places, and I think it's likely, I have no insider knowledge, I'm just a dumb American, that the PSG group completely breaks up and they restart the team, whether they build around Messi, whether they build around Mbappe, whether they build around Neymar, or whether they build without any of them. Something will definitely be happening with PSG this summer, and so all 3 of these guys are going to have their names in the headlines for a bunch of different rumors. Then you have a guy like Jude Bellingham, who's probably going to be the hottest name on the transfer market. Everyone in Europe wants this kid. I think Liverpool, Real Madrid, and maybe City are the top 3 favorites to land him right now, but literally every club in Europe is going to want him, and it's just going to be wherever Jude ends up wanting to play. And of course, the more his name is in the headlines, the more it spotlights his market. Then you have a guy like Christian Pulisic. I know United States men's national team, because Pulisic's not a world-class player, all that nonsense. It matters a lot for our market what happens with Pulisic. If he ends up going to a club like Real Madrid and sitting on the bench, it'd be pretty cool, but I don't know if he really gets all that notoriety from sitting on the bench. It'd probably be better for him to move to a club in like France or Portugal and get consistent minutes, although that's not really sexy for his market or for the hobby. It'd probably be better for him in his career. But if he does get a move to something like a Manchester United or Real Madrid or these huge clubs that his name somehow ends up in the headlines for, it's probably good for his market, but the US market will definitely be paying attention to what happens with Pulisic. And then we'll move on to the conclusion for today's video. Understanding the upcoming catalyst on the market can help you find your approach for these next few months. So, do you want to try and get in on players before they hit major milestones? Do you want to avoid overpaying for certain players that have performance towards the end of the season already priced into their cards and aim for a better entry point? And do you want to target players that are going to be out of the spotlight for the next few months? These are the types of questions I would be asking yourself as you start to formulate your plan in the market for these next few months. So go ahead and try and answer these questions. Do you want to be the type of person in the market that tries to get in on players before they hit those milestones? Do you want to sit around and wait for some prices to cool down? Do you want to target specifically players that are outside the spotlight that'll be in the spotlight in a few months' time when the season starts back up for 23? All these things should be on your mind as you start to make your plan for these next few months, and then go ahead, work on executing that plan, and enjoy the market as we all do. So, alrighty, all that is out of the way. Thank you guys so much for clicking on the video and tuning in today. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, Discord link down below to join the conversation with myself and some other collectors, investors, flippers, all those fun words in the Soccer Study Discord. Feel free to follow me on Instagram, all that fun stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video.